Externally also, there are cautions around segmentation, and some companies have found that using it can cause unintended consequences. For example, you can unintentionally lose your intended audience. The example you can see on this slide is describes what Lilly's marketing for brand communications for its Cialis product for ED look like today. But when Cialis first came out, Lilly had the idea that its messages should be segmented primarily for men who were the users of the product, and they overlooked women in the audience who tend to frequently be the healthcare decision makers in a family and who also are very much impacted by the condition of ED. But Lilly quickly learned that this was an issue and changed its strategy away from the gender-based approach that it originally took to what you see here, calling on partners very much in including them in the marketing approach and product branding. We talked with companies about product communications before and after NDA filing to find out what topics in the product introduction were most important to them. We asked them to rank various areas, either 1, 2, 3, or 4, as their most important of these areas, these tactics. And you can see here that early on, disease and medical condition background was ranked most important by 100% of the respondents ranked it in their top 4, and 71% rated it number 1. You also can see that number 1 ranks went to burden of disease, epidemiology, and diagnostic and biomarkers information by about a quarter of the respondents in the study. The least communicated topics before phase 3 were about competitors and competitive landscape, symptom identification, the biological and cellular causative models of the disease, and social considerations or sensitivities were the least often ranked number 1. After the NDA filing, we saw some changes in the ratings. Disease information was still very highly rated and still number 1 with nearly half the benchmark class. But burden of illness and competitors and the competitive landscape took on increasing importance, with 88% of the respondents rating competitive information among their top 4 findings at this state. And we also saw that an increase in some of the other areas as well. Delivering disease awareness communications in new product communications that involve disease state awareness can be overwhelmingly complex, especially when aimed at a lay audience. Interviewed executives identified a best practice to us for identifying this kind of information in waves that can be described as a series of steps that we've outlined for you here, starting with communicating the burden of illness, especially if the condition is considered a lifestyle issue that might not be really important to some people, in some people's minds. And this helps build the important empathy with patients. And then following with messages in this sequence with the human side of the condition or personal trauma for the patients, the cost of the disease to society as well, the extent of the population affected, and the symptoms of the disease and how to recognize them. And then finally, how the new product will help sufferers, and internally, how the new product will benefit the company. Very important to get those last two messages out. Successful teams told us they use a structured approach to brand communication. And the cycle you see here illustrates this with the key portions of the structure illustrated here, beginning with setting clear communications objectives at the beginning of your communication process. And this involves setting communication objectives that align closely with positioning of the brand, the goals, and the market definition for the brand. And then exercising tight message control, and that involves ensuring that there's a consistent message with all audiences and ensuring communication integrity across messages. Communications will leak, and that needs to be acknowledged and recognized. You don't say anything internally that you wouldn't want to see in print. And we did hear companies say that they had some processes around preventing information leaks, such as labeling all materials and cautioning employees specifically about which communications could and couldn't be repeated outside the company, and even making sure that there was a process, as we saw earlier, for reining in controversy. Another step in the structured approach is carefully qualifying and selecting designated speakers. This is a very critical step. Not all executives are ready for this, and qualifying and designating a limited number of approved speakers follows that strategy as well. Some companies assess and develop speakers through role-playing exercises. We heard one pitfall in this area is trying to switch messages in midstream. It's hard to go back and find out all the things you screwed up and fix them, said an executive director. You can't, for example, start out calling your brand saying that it treats a disease and then later deciding to call it a condition, because the people will always remember what you started out with. Moving around this wheel, the next step is giving employees communication tools to help them, arming them with a script in some cases for answering questions and challenges they might encounter outside the office in social situations, or some companies offered employees sensitivity training. And then finally, continually evolving communication priorities as the market or brand strategy changes. Companies stayed flexible in this area and made frequent updates as new clinical research came in, for example.